appreciate you inviting me in for a chat today.
You're very, very welcome. It's lovely to have you here. So Juanita, we met earlier this year, I think, or possibly towards the end of the year, didn't we? Because we were we are in the same coaching program with the wonderful Julie Creffield. And we were doing her Tribe Builder program. Now, what's absolutely fascinating to me is that when we met, Juanita, you were expanding. You already had a successful business around the business of animal care, or dog care in particular, wasn't it? And training for dogs, and you were raising that business. So it wasn't like you were a startup. Now you're doing something completely different. So your floor, Juanita, please share with us what you're doing now and who you help, and how, the backstory, how you came to be doing it.
Well, I guess variety is the spice of life, isn't it, Rachel?
Absolutely.
Although I'm now working, I'm a wealth coach, so I help people learn how to get started investing, even if they are complete beginners and they don't have a lot of money to get started with. So it's, a lot of it is about training and teaching as such. And yes, my background before that was dog training, but I've actually been in the training space for quite a long time. I started off a few decades ago in retail as a retail manager, then went into retail sales training, HR training, admin training, customer service training. I was a telesales manager, a field sales manager. So I have a real training background. So although it's a different subject, it's kind of what
that makes perfect sense. And of course, I didn't know any of that about you. And it's interesting because when I'm doing a story hunt session with my clients, as well as finding some stories, we very often find a theme exactly like that. So that makes perfect sense. So it's a kind of, you're just training in something different. So that's interesting. So what you're doing is offering training and coaching. So am I right in saying you're not a financial advisor as such?
That's correct. A financial advisor is a professional who is able to recommend and advise on specific products for people to put their money into. A wealth coach like myself is a financial educator. So we're teaching people how to look after their money, how to generate additional income. And then when they have that additional income, what they can do with it, because money needs a job. You need to have it coming in to your account, give it a specific job to do, whether it's for saving or whether it's for your everyday expenses or whether it's for fun. And then money flows out the way, hopefully the way that you want it to flow out.
I love that. I love that concept of money needs a job.
What normally happens for most people is money flows in and it just flows back out again, and they don't really have a path for it to go along. So this is just about teaching people everything from very basic skills about how to budget through to the best way to get their money working for them, as opposed to just spending it. It needs, as I say, to be given a job so that you can use some of that money that you've got spare after you've paid for all of your essentials, like your mortgage, your rent, your car payments, whatever, to allocate some of it into investing. And when you're investing, what you're doing with your money is you're using it to create assets or to buy assets, either one. And then those assets generate more income for you so that you're in a position to buy bigger assets. And then those bigger assets create even more income for you. And then you just keep repeating that until rich. And that's basically what I'm teaching people.
Fabulous. I love the phrase, and I'm sure you use it in your work, that thing of being financially free. When I first heard that, I thought, oh, I love the sound of that. Yeah. Yes, that's the ultimate goal, is it, for the people?
There's all sorts of levels. There's being financially just secure, like stable, where you've just got enough to pay your bills, and then you kind of work up to having a complete financial freedom where your money is working for you completely and you're not working as such, in that, say, perhaps you've got properties and your properties are earning income for you, or you've got shares and your shares are bringing you in dividends. So it's going from having to work and trade your hours and your time for money to getting your money to work for you.
Ah, and it sounds, Juanita, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're not necessarily looking at people who already have spare money that they want to invest, whether it be in property or shares, but actually you're looking to help anybody that, you know, maybe even people that right now are in a lot of debt. Would that be right?
Absolutely. I work with people who are in debt all the way through to people who are already wealthy. And although very wealthy people tend to use financial advisors, more and more people that have wealth want to use a financial advisor, but they also want to understand what that financial advisor, what the decisions they're making and why they're making those decisions, so that they can have some input into what's actually happening to their money, rather than just giving it over and trusting that the person that they're paying to look after their money is actually doing a good job. So it's all just about knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I work with people who are debt, not people who have so much debt that they can't pay the mortgage. Then they need to go and see a professional, like a debt charity or some citizens advice, something like that. But people who have enough to pay all their essentials like the mortgage and the rent, but maybe they've got a bit of credit card debt or something like that they want to get rid of. So everything from there and in between.
Okay, great. And do all those people follow the same program with you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's actually, building wealth is 80% mindset and only 20% skills. So the skills and the strategies are very, very simple. They're not hard to learn or hard to follow, as long as you've got somebody pointing you in the right direction and keeping you safe. But a lot of what happens is what goes up on in our head, and the stories that we tell ourselves, which quite often are the stories that our parents told us and their parents told them. It's like generational stories about money, about, you know, money's hard to come by, money doesn't grow on trees, when money comes in the window, love goes out the door. There's all of these stories around money, and money is the root of all evil. That's you know, one of the ones that I have a client at the minute, that's her big story that she came to me with. And you have to kind of get past the mindset first, and then when you've got your head around the fact that yes, you do deserve wealth and money isn't evil. In fact, it's very powerful for good. You can do a lot of good with money. You can contribute much more to your family, your friends, your community if you're in a position of wealth. So once you start changing those stories, you're able to kind of be open to learning the skills. But they're simple skills no matter what level you're at.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because as you know, stories are the sort of currency of my business, as it were. And you're talking about one of those different kinds of stories. I always think we've got sort of stories on one plane of our lives, which is, you know, our backstory, our funny stories, or our big story, whatever it is, but sort of almost on a different plane. There's what you're saying is the story we tell ourselves. The story other people have told us for us, you know, that they've written for our life, and so on. So yeah, I can understand how powerful those would be, because they're so powerful in every other area of their life. Why wouldn't they be in terms of our money? I'm going to invite you at this point, Juanita, to share the story I know that you want to share, because that leads really nicely on from that, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's to do with investing, because I think a lot of people find the idea of investing very intimidating, that it's not something for everyday folk. This is something, I grew up thinking that investing was something for men in pinstripe suits with bowler hats and briefcases. It wasn't something for your everyday person, never mind a female. You know, it definitely was a man, you know, money was the man's thing. And what happened was, way back in the 80s, I guess I was in my 20s at the time, or maybe probably early 20s, I would imagine. And my dad, both my parents worked for British Telecom. In fact, they predate British Telecom. They worked for the GPO, which was the General Post Office.
Yeah.
They both worked in two different. My dad was an executive engineer, but in the 80s, the government, Margaret Thatcher, decided to, put BT up for sale, and the employees got first dibs on the shares. And obviously, my dad, being an employee, he was allowed to buy shares in the company, and they got first dibs over the general public. And their family and friends were allowed to buy shares as well, but only a certain allocation. And it was kind of like a bit of a raffle. said how many you wanted to buy, but there was no guarantee that on the day that the shares went on sale that everybody would get everything that they applied for. It was a bit of a lottery. They'd no idea how many people would want the shares and how many each person would want. So he put his he offered to buy some shares, which was all above board for myself and my two sisters. So say it was 100 shares or whatever, it was probably 500, but whatever the number was, we each bought in our name these shares. And as predicted, my dad said, yeah, I'll lend you the money. Basically what he was saying was, on the proviso that we're going to sell these shares within minutes of them going on sale, because people are predicting that there's going to be a massive profit to be made from these shares. So the day came along, the stockbroker, because there was no online platform, so you did it yourself like you can do now. It's so simple for anybody to buy and trade in shares, but in those there was a stockbroker involved, actually in a physical office. The shares went on sale. We all made this, few £100 profit each, which in the 80s was, it was a substantial amount of money that we each made, and we thought nothing more about it. And then about a month or so later, we're sitting in the house and we heard this knock on the door, and we look out, and then there's a police car sitting outside the door. And like, my mum and dad were very upright, law-abiding citizens. I mean, we definitely did not come from the background, and it was a very, very posh. My parents were very quite, they liked the neighborhood that they lived in. They were quite, pleased about where they were kind of living. And it definitely, you did not get police cars driving down our road, never mind knocking on people's doors. And, you could imagine the embarrassment of the curtains twitching and why are the police going into the Brehony's house? And anyway, it turned out the police came in and they said that they wanted to talk to myself and my sisters privately away from my parents, and asked them to leave and go into another room. Now, we were adults at the time, so there was nothing, inappropriate, but my mum and dad went into the kitchen and we were interviewed in the living room. And it turned out there had been a lot of underhand dealing going on, and that other employees of BT had been making up fictitious family members and fictitious friends and applying for extra shares in their names. But what my dad had done was all above board. But anyway, the police, it took them about an hour to do our statements, maybe even an hour and a half, more than that. And then I was starting to think about, oh my goodness, I'd forgotten my mum and dad are still in the kitchen. I'm sure they're really panicking, but why are what's it all about? So I thought done my statement, went on to take my sisters, and I thought, well, I'll just excuse myself to go to the bathroom, and I quickly put my head around the kitchen door, and I'll never forget the shock on my dad's face. He was white and he's puffing away and I said, Dad, it's okay, it's okay. It's just about the shares, but there's nothing wrong. You haven't done anything wrong. Don't worry, and the relief on his face. But I think that kind of was one of the things that made me think that, investing is risky, buying shares, you could get yourself into trouble and whatever. So that's just a little story that I had about why I thought share buying was just something to be, it wasn't for ordinary folk like me. You had to really know what you were doing, and you had to be a broker. But as I said, nowadays, I have clients, and just in minutes they've signed up for their account, on a platform. You don't need a lot of money. You can, trade.
You can juggle with £100 or something.
Yeah. You don't need much to get started. So,
and I remember that BT sale, because I invested once they came out to the public. I would have been similar age to you, I think, and I invested what was then my holiday fund, and it quadrupled.
Well done.
Almost overnight. So, and then, I did as you did, cashed it out, went off on my holiday and didn't have to save anymore. So it was great. But
somebody advised you well then.
Well, I don't think they did. I just saw that it was coming out on the
good for you.
For myself, I think.
Oh, well done.
I know I did the similar thing with Capital FM, the Capital Radio. And I kept those shares in the end for a very long time. And I didn't know how to do any more with them, but by the time I eventually did sell them, I did quite well from, given how much, the tiny amount I'd invested.
Yes.
So they didn't make me, I couldn't buy a house or anything, but again, invested 50 or 100 pounds in them. But that's a wonderful story. And what I always like to do, Juanita, on these story lives is to give a suggestion on how you might be able to use that in a talk, and where it might be a good starting point. And I think you could use that point of the police car arriving, and it could either be there was a knock at the door, or the neighbours' curtains started twitching.
Yes.
Use that point as the start of what was going on, because I so get what you're saying about, you know, that wasn't the thing that happened in your neighborhood. You've all been wanting to know what was going on. So, you know, when you choose to use that in a talk, and you could make that a very powerful story, you know, in the future, whether it's a networking group or on a stage. There's lots of stories in what you've said. So what would you think is the key learning from that story, Juanita? Because I always like the stories in speaking are great, but if they need to have some kind of learning for the audience, what would be the lesson?
Well, I think the learning for me was actually a wrong lesson, in that it was that share dealing is not for amateurs. You know, that, you know, it's best left to the professionals. So actually it was a wrong story.
Yeah, but the meaning of the story doesn't have to be the lesson that you learned at the time. It would be, maybe, therefore, it could be something like, you don't always have to take things at face value. Because
Yes.
it was your learning, but it actually held you up. It
Yes.
you know, it may have been that you would have invested earlier on in life if that thing hadn't happened.
Very true. Yes.
Created a limiting belief for you. So it could be something around digging old stories out and looking at how they may have limited you. There'd definitely be some learning around that. So what's going to happen now with the dog training? Is that still going? Are you just, yeah?
Yeah, I still have a dog training membership. It's called the Tricks and Treats Club. It's a monthly membership.
Okay.
So, that runs alongside. I think one of the things that we teach people as wealth coaches is to have multiple streams of income, because a lot of people find themselves very vulnerable at the minute because they have maybe only one or two income streams. Most people only have one income stream, and I'm very vulnerable in situations like we've got at the minute. So for me, there's 8 different types of income: earned income, profit income, residual, affiliate, dividend, rental, royalties. So there's lots of different. So for me, that is my residual income that comes in month after month from my dog training. So
yeah. And it has to be said, that's your passion, isn't it? Your dogs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
So just before we finish up, Juanita, just say a little bit more about the program. Is it one standard program, or is there a choice of programs for people? Just give them an idea of how long it is and what's involved.
Well, there's a range of programs that I have.
Okay.
The first is a mastermind. It's a 60-month program, and it's a long one, but it takes people from 0 to millionaire. Basically, if you follow everything that we do over a 5-year period, if you take the advice on board and you take action, you will have the tools to become a millionaire. It only costs £45 a month, so it's a very affordable program. And you just kind of follow there's 60 modules, one each month. It takes the form of a mastermind. But I also work with clients on a one-to-one basis, which I have clients internationally in Australia, Singapore, America, Spain, and you can work with me because group programs aren't for everyone. Some people like to work at their own pace, or maybe they have a bigger budget and therefore they want to get stuck into the investing a little bit sooner, rather than on the mastermind program where you're kind of looking at how to generate extra income at the start, so that you've got that income to invest. And then there's a middle range program where you can maybe learn in a shorter space of time, say 6 months or whatever, or 12 months, or you can do, well, there's a variety of things. Actually, because I teach people how to invest in property, shares, business, and bullion, which is gold and silver, you can actually take one of those single subjects and just do those as well. So there's something to suit everybody. And I'm holding a masterclass at the end of December, on December the 29th and December 30th, to give people a choice, because it's between Christmas and New Year. So it's called Stop Waiting on the Lottery Win, because so many people go, you know,
When
if
I win the
I could
lottery.
win the lottery, or whenever I win the lottery, I'll do that. But there is another way. You don't have to win the lottery. So it's called Stop Waiting for the Lottery and A Beginner's Guide to Investing, and that's at the end of
Okay.
it.
And is that a paid?
No, that's a free masterclass.
Okay. So Juanita, please put the details of that in the chat. And
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you very much for that,
if there's
Rachel.
a link to it, it'd be great. And also if you put your website so that people can look at the different programs.
Yep, I shall certainly. I'll put my contact details for LinkedIn.
Yeah, fabulous, fabulous. I've been absolutely fascinated to hear all about this, Juanita, and just amazed how quickly, because I know, because we're in the same group, that it's grown very quickly for you, hasn't it? So
well, I think there's a big need. A lot
yeah,
of
you're
people
probably
who
right.
weren't told at school, and we're getting to an age, a lot of us now, where we're thinking we haven't maybe planned as well as we should have planned for the future, and we need to be. It's better late than never. So financial education is something we should all do.
Yeah, absolutely. Juanita, thank you so much for your time and coming on.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It was a lovely story. I love that story because I can completely relate to it, being of similar vintage. And yeah, and for sharing some of your wisdom and whatever. I think it's been really useful. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rachel.